Lala Wu, the co-founder and executive director of the Sister District Project. That website, sisterdistrict.com, bringing women into politics. Sister_district is the Twitter handle, as well as _Lala, L-A-L-A _Wu, W-U _. Lala Wu, welcome. Lala, welcome to the program. So glad to have you with us. Can you give us the details of the Texas, the proposed Texas legislation and why it's consequential?
Thanks, Tom. So glad to be here. Texas already has some of the toughest voting laws in the country, and Republicans are trying to make them even tougher. And I think it's important to put this in a national context that there have already been 17 states that have passed 28 laws restricting voting, and all of these are pushed by Republicans that are premised on the big lie that, of course, somehow Biden didn't win the election. And with the Texas law in particular, it truly is, I mean, a real parade of horribles. And I think what's important to note here is that it's not random. It's not just Republicans throwing spaghetti at the wall of what do they think might restrict voters, and in particular voters of color. The background here is that in 2020, Harris County, which is where Houston is, they rolled out a bunch of new measures during the pandemic to help people vote. This includes drive-through voting, which 1 in 10 early voters took advantage of, expanded voting hours. They automatically sent ballots to eligible voters. They had 24-hour voting in the form of drop boxes. And what happened was that even though Republicans brought some litigation to challenge it, voter of colors prevailed, and they really benefited from these expanded measures, and there was the highest turnout in 30 years. And now fast forward to where we are now, and of course the Texas law wants to restrict all of these things. They want to ban drive-through voting. They want to get rid of those expanded voting hours. They want to eliminate 24-hour drop boxes. And they want to ban, mailing ballots to eligible voters, even criminalizing certain aspects of that process. And on top of that, they also want to add more protections for partisan poll workers, which really allow them to roam free and intimidate folks. We know that groups like the Proud Boys and other Trump-aligned Trump supporters have been recruited in the past to come to Harris County and to basically stand and, act as so-called poll workers, poll watchers, excuse me, and create havoc in that way. They also want to criminalize, things like small clerical errors. And that's not the direction that we need to go in this country when it comes to how to vote. So the list goes on and on. There's new ID requirements for voting by mail, new requirements for people who are trying to help other people to vote. And the list, like I said, goes on and on and on. But this is really a very, very targeted attempt by the Texas Republicans to restrict all of the ways that Harris County in particular, which has a large urban Black and brown population, were able to successfully expand the electorate.
Yeah, and the Supreme Court has essentially said if the law doesn't say you can't vote if you're a person of color, if it doesn't say those words, basically, it doesn't matter. That partisan gerrymandering, partisan restrictions on voting are just fine, and yet the partisan lines, since 1968, when the Republican Party embraced white supremacy with Nixon's Southern strategy, the partisan divide has become also a racial divide in the United States.
Exactly.
And it just blows my mind that well, it doesn't actually, given who John Roberts is and the work that he did. I mean, one of his major projects when he worked in the Reagan White House in Reagan's Department of Justice. Was trying to find ways around the Brown versus Board of Education law. He wrote a whole long paper on it. That's right. Suggesting ways to get around Brown v. Board, as well as Roe v. Wade, which I lay out in my book on the Supreme Court. But it's you just look at the history of these people; it's just amazing. So we're talking with Lala Wu, the co-founder and executive director of the Sister District Project. Sisterdistrict.com is the website. So what are you hearing from your collaborators and colleagues in Texas about how people are pushing back on this? And if the Republicans succeed in getting this law passed, which actually looks like it's probable, I mean, at a certain point, these Democrats are going to have to go home. What will the fallout be? I mean, I've seen some optimists, for example, saying, these laws against voting in Georgia, well, as you said, 17 states now, they're going to cause more Democrats to show up, and people are going to be super energized, sort of like the way Donald Trump, a lot of people showed up in the 2020 election, not so much to vote for Joe Biden, but to vote against Donald Trump. Is that optimism justified, or will these voter suppression efforts be sufficiently successful to crush voter turnout in the next election in 2022?
I think that if this law passes, it is going to be a huge blow to Democrats in Texas, but that doesn't mean that all hope is lost. There are really strong community-based organizations in Texas, Texas Organizing Project as an example of one of them, that really focus on building a strong electorate, a strong voter base, and turning people out despite all odds. Like I mentioned, Texas already has some of the strictest voting laws in the country. And, no matter what happens, folks on the ground will be fighting tooth and nail, doing everything they can within the new laws to turn people out. So, I would say nothing is for certain. We can't, take our eye off the ball. We have to continue to stay focused, continue to support the organizers and the Democrats in the state who are doing this hard work of fighting back. And, what we are hearing on the ground, for example, Sister District, we build progressive power in state legislators and support state legislative swing district races. And last year, our alumni Representative Ann Johnson was the only red to blue flip in Texas, and she represents parts of Harris County, which is, as I mentioned, where Houston is located. She has become one of the leading voices in the walkout, and, along with over 50 Democrats, as you mentioned, who left the state to break quorum and stop this bill from being rammed through, they're risking arrest and electoral challenges, even stronger electoral challenges when they get back to the state when they're up for re-election. I mean, one of them even missed her wedding, and so people are really putting themselves out on the line. And, I appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation, to continue to shine light on this very, very, serious issue that we need to continue to support the folks.
I saw a report on TV last night, and I'm assuming that it's credible. It was on either CNN or MSNBC. That said that, for example, in Georgia, when they declared that there was going to be a special election, that Reverend Warnock ran in, as I recall, or in Arizona, you had this special election with Mark Kelly, that in Texas, when you declare a special election, you have either 4 or 6 months from the time that it's declared and people throw their hat into the ring until the time that the election happens. And so there's plenty of time there for people who might be excited by that special election or particularly invigorated by the possibility of a candidate they like to register to vote. So under this new law in Texas, what they're saying is that special elections have to happen within 28 days. And once you register to vote, you may not vote for the first time until the 29th day, which prevents people from, from voting in special elections if that's the thing that they're trying to address. I mean, it's just crazy, the granularity of this. And go ahead.
And here's the thing, Tom. I mean, Republicans are just merciless, right? Yeah. They just are highly targeted and strategic, and they take no prisoners when it comes to passing legislation that benefits themselves.
Yeah, just like the old South. It's amazing. Lala Wu, the co-founder and executive director of SisterDistrict.com is the website, SisterDistrict.com.